Welcome to a special podcast series, Breaking the Silence, Canada's Classrooms of Injustice, a series that delves into the stories about the federal day school system, produced by the Legacy of Hope Foundation with the generous support of the Indigenous Screen Office. Over the course of 8 episodes, we'll hear powerful stories and reflections that shed light on the often overlooked impacts of the federal day school system on Indigenous peoples, families, and communities. Join us as we listen, learn, and honor the stories that must be heard and must never be forgotten. Today, our host Gordon speaks with day school survivor Conrad Saulis. Conrad is the survivor of the Tobique Indian Day School that operated in his community until the mid-1970s. Conrad has over 50 years of experience working for and with First Nations and other Indigenous peoples at the community, regional, and national levels. Conrad is currently the Executive Director with the Wabanaki Council on Disability, and in this episode he shares candidly about his experience at the Tobique Indian Day School, why it's important Canadians know more about the day school system, and his thoughts on what comes next in the evolutionary process of the relationship between Indigenous peoples and mainstream society. Please enjoy this episode of the Roots and Hoots podcast Day School Series Project.
Hello and welcome to this podcast series on the federal day school system through the Legacy of Hope Foundation. Our first guest in this podcast series is Conrad Saulis. Welcome, Conrad, and happy to have you here with us today. How are you?
I'm doing good, Gord. I'm glad to be here.
Oh, that's good. Let's just start by maybe telling us a little bit about where you come from and your family and your nation.
Okay, yeah, I was born on my home community of Nelgutkuk First Nation down in New Brunswick. More people would know it as Tobique First Nation.
Right, yeah.
Which is along the now it's called the St. John River, but my ancestors called it the Woollestok River. Okay. Which meant the good water because it provided us with a lot of food. So I was born on the reserve, grew up on the reserve. My first language was Woollestok Way.
Which is what, more commonly known as what?
Well, a lot of people would think that it's the more common name of those that would know the nations from the east are Meliseet.
Oh, it's Meliseet?
Yes.
It's not Mi'kmaq.
No, it's not Mi'kmaq. The Mi'kmaq is a sister nation to us.
Right, okay.
There's the Mi'kmaq, and then the Woollestok Gewik or Woollestok, which is what I am, and then the Passamaquoddy, and then the Penobscots, and up near towards Montreal, the Abenaki.
Yeah.
So we are the Wabanaki Confederacy.
Okay.
Those nations, and I think there's actually even more down towards Boston, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
We all share a similar kind of language.
Do you have any ties with the nations in the Boston area?
Yes, absolutely. There are many ties that that many of our people have, both the Mi'kmaq and the Woollestok Week would have with the nations down in around where the casino is in Connecticut. There's strong connections, and I think there's more stronger relationships and connections to be made really by our nations, because even as the current president of the United States says, that's an imaginary border. Well, it is for us. Yeah. Because like for the Woollestok Way, the nation, the international border between New Brunswick and Maine, really cuts our ancestral lands in half.
That's right. Yeah.
And so part of our lands are in Canada and in the United States in Maine, but also a portion of it are up in Quebec. Gabeg is actually a Woollestok word for where the river narrows, which happens right at Quebec City. Gabeg. And so, like I said, I grew up on the reserve. I'm 4 of 8 children. And our first language or predominant language growing up was Woollestok, and like I said, the people that would speak the language the closest to us are actually the Passamaquoddy, who are down near down in the border between southern New Brunswick and northeastern Maine, around where Campobello Island is in that area, St. Andrews, New Brunswick. That's all Passamaquoddy Nation lands and ancestral lands. Yeah. So, but then, I married an Anishinaabe woman from Nipissing, and my mom and her mom could really actually talk.
Really?
Even though it was an Anishinaabe and Wolastoq way, they could talk and compare languages, and so there was similar words.
Well, your language is the sister language of Mi'kmaq.
Yep.
And Algonquin.
Yep.
Is the mother language of Nipissing, where your wife's from.
That's right.
Plus also Cree, where I'm from.
That's right. Yeah.
We're all under the Algonquin language.
Algonquin languages. I remember going to a conference once out in Winnipeg, actually, and I can't remember who the elder was, or the person that was telling the story, but he was telling a story about him going to visit his grandfather one time and had a question for his grandfather, and his grandfather had, I can't remember the names at the time, this is like 20, 30, 40 years ago now. Anyway, he had said, grandfather, I have a question for you. So his grandfather says, well, abin, come and sit. Well, that's the same word in my language. Abin, it means to sit. So it was just like, wow,
For us, it's api.
Yeah, it's close enough.
Close enough.
Really, and like our name for grandmother is Kokam, Gokam, Gokmas, and so again, that's one of those words that just is in so many of our First Nation languages.
Yeah, there's a lot of common words.
Yeah, and so growing up on the reserve, I had three other older brothers and sisters, and so they had went to the day school before me, and so by the time I was getting ready to be going to the school right there on the reserve,
that's Tobique, right?
That's Tobique, yeah. Yes. Tobique Indian Day School, it was called. Yeah. Well, luckily, I didn't have to go to the Wabanaki residential school, which was down in Wabanaki First Nation. Near Halifax. The day school, it was run by the Sisters of Charity, and
so a lot of us, church.
A lot of us go. Charity. We never saw the charity part. Unfortunately, but
did they feed you in the schools?
They gave us we call them heart techs. They were very hard biscuits.
Standard biscuits.
Oh my! They were horrible. They had no flavor. They had no flavor, and they had huge barrels of skim powdered milk.
We got the same thing.
Powdered milk, and you'd have to mix it up,
with water,
that's what I know. And it was just, oh my God. And then, I don't know if you guys had it, but we had cod liver oil pills.
No.
And if you say take the top half of your thumb, that's about how big those doggone things were. No. And you're trying to swallow them, as a little boy or girl down your throat. But they would force us to have cod liver oil pills during the winter months, and which it might have been a good thing to do, but no, the hard biscuits, I tell you, were.
We call them the dog biscuits.
Yeah, well, I agree with that. They were definitely not nothing that I would feed any human. Yeah. By any means.
Did you speak your language? Were you allowed to speak it around the school?
We spoke it at home. We spoke it on the reserve. We spoke it walking around the reserve. We spoke it around the school when school was not in session.
Right.
But when we were in school and around the school grounds, we couldn't speak our language at school because we would then get the strap. And a lot of us did get the strap.
Yes.
So we all spoke our language. All of the children that I grew up with back in the 50s and 60s, that was pretty much the first language we all spoke in our homes. Yeah. And then we all had to. I remember one time my mom and dad saying to each other, "Well, we're going to have to teach this one how to speak English," and they were pointing at me, saying, "We're going to have to teach him." So So they were preparing me, for the situation of going to the school and not being able to speak my First Nation language, and so it was and everything was in English, and
in the school,
in the
classroom,
school,
yeah,
in the school.
What was it
Absolutely.
like? What was the atmosphere like in the school, like in the classroom? Like, what was your teachers like toward the students?
The environment in the school, in the classrooms, was tense, very tense and very nervous. We went to school every day being afraid, nervous, because the nuns, honest to God, would walk around the classroom, and we had like grade 1 and 2, 3 and 4, and 5 and 6.
Yeah.
Were the three.
Yeah, each class
classes.
there's usually 2 grades, right?
2 grades in
Yes.
each class,
Right.
and so they would walk around with their
Yardstick?
pointers.
Or the pointers?
Oh yeah, and they were those things were made of the hardest. But they would walk around, and we would be doing our writing assignment, making the letters and staying within the lines, as best as we could, and we're kids. When you're nervous, trying to write really nice letters and English letters, of course, and alphabet and or numbers, and then every now and then you'd hear this whack, and the nun would have whacked somebody across the shoulders just because they wanted to.
Yeah.
And so we were always in that kind of an environment of fear.
Yeah.
And you're trying to learn. You're trying to learn something that you don't even know what it is, because this isn't something you learn in your first 6 years of life.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden you're being told you have to learn your ABCs, your 1, 2, 3s and everything, and it's just like, read this book, Dick and Jane and Spot and all that stuff,
Right.
and you're just like, I can't relate to Dick and Jane and Spot.
It's a foreign world, right?
Absolutely,
Yeah.
So the environment in the classroom was tense and fear,
Yeah.
all the time. And I don't know if that's the kind of environment where children learn.
And you couldn't at that time, punishment, physical punishment was common, right? I mean, unacceptable, and you couldn't go home and tell your parents or the chief.
Well, in the case of us, my mom was an incredibly devout Catholic.
Yeah.
And my dad was a policeman. He was a band constable when he came back from the war, because he actually helped to liberate Holland. Mm-hmm. And they celebrated their 80th liberation just these past few days. Mm-hmm. And I actually have an uncle buried over there. And so after my dad came back from the war, he became a band constable for the reserve, and then eventually became a special constable with the RCMP.
Yeah.
So in my family, there was kind of like maybe a little bit more tolerance about us, because, my mom was a very strong Catholic. She was a part of the Catholic Women's League, on the reserve, the CWL, and
the teachers recognize this,
and they would recognize those kinds of people, in the community.
And you're the son of this guy, and
but it didn't give us the kind of freedom or latitude that you would think necessarily. And not that I, as a little boy, I wasn't thinking about that. Because we would still get, punished. We would get strapped. We would get the pointer across the back of our shoulders, and I remember one time my sister went and my sister actually told my mom, and about getting the strap for being caught speaking Wolastoq in school. Yeah. So my mom went down to the convent, because there was a school, and the convent was right there, and the church was over here. Good descriptions on a podcast, but anyway, but they were really in close proximity to each other, these 3 buildings, and so my mom went to the convent and told the nun, if you touch my daughter again, I won't say it on the air or whatever. But she threatened that nun, and because she did not believe in that kind of punishment, she did not believe that should be happening, not only to her children, but really to any children.
Yeah. So, especially coming from, a person who practices teachings of God, Christianity.
Well, that would cause confusion in us because, you're learning the Ten Commandments. You're learning the values of Catholicism, and Christianity, and you're not experiencing Christianity from these Christians. So your mind as a child is going, what is Christianity then? If they're not treating us the way that they're, these words in the Bible or in other documents or things that we're being told, the words are different than what we're actually experiencing as children in school, and so it creates even, you go to school, you're afraid, you're in an environment of fear, and then all this confusion of this kind of messaging of be good, and treat people with respect, but yet, we're the last ones that were receiving any kind of respect right in the middle of our community in this school, and so as a child, you're going, I'm so confused with all of this stuff, but you're supposed to be learning something, and so you go, what am I learning, and so.
Did you have any religious teachings in the classroom?
We had Catholic religious teachings. Yeah, absolutely.
Before the math and science started.
We would have to say the Our Father. In the morning.
Lord's Prayer,
the Lord's Prayer. Yeah, absolutely.
What about music? Were you taught to sing any songs?
We celebrated all of the colonizers' days, including St. Patrick's Day. Wow. So we'd hear because one of the teachers was Irish. So she loved the song McNamara's Band. Yeah. So we knew McNamara's Band backwards and forwards because we would hear that in March all the time. And then all of the other songs that go with Christmas and all that stuff, and then, of course, getting ready for Easter.
It's funny how certain things, you carry them for life pretty much. Like I can still remember, I still know songs from grade 4, teacher standing up there. And actually writing the words on the wall, on the board, on the blackboard, right?
That's right.
And then this guy was the male teacher at the time, and he'd be up there with his yardstick and waving and sing the song. And
we never had any male teachers. We just had nuns. We only had nuns, and so that was all.
You went to a church school, obviously,
Yeah.
Would you say you had a positive experience or a negative experience in the Federal Day School?
It was a very negative experience.
Yeah.
Like I described to you, when you go to school, afraid and fearing that you're going to be punished or get over the back of the shoulders with a pointer because of whatever, and you didn't even know what you had done wrong. Yeah. So it was a continually 6 hours of fear. That you're in that environment, and I guess for us, because we got to go back home, and live with mom and dad and our brothers and sisters, we were able to escape that. Right. As different than the children that were forced to go to residential schools. Yeah. For me, I don't know if I even call it a school, to be honest with you, because I would think that a school is a positive learning environment, and there was definitely no positive learning environment for me from grade 1 to 6. It was never a positive learning environment. It was more like persevering. Yeah. To be honest with you.
With your other classmates, people you went to school with, especially boys, was there some kind of hierarchy? The hierarchy of I don't know. Did it happen on your reserve community?
I think we all knew who the tough guys were. Yeah. There were guys on the reserve they're the tough guys. They're the ones that would do all the fighting.
And there was always a bully.
There was always a bully. And and I'm not going to say anything in particular, but in some situations, the reality that your dad is the policeman on the reserve, even though you're living there and you're from there, because your dad is the policeman on the reserve, opens you up to a little more, well, not protections, but a little more to be, either picked on or to be whatever, because they're trying to get at your dad through you.
Well, they're afraid of your dad if you do anything to you.
So there was that dynamic, and that's got nothing to do with the day school by any means. But on the other hand, within the day school, I think the greatest fear that we all really had were the nuns.
Really?
I think we all built some kind of, I don't want to call it camaraderie, but because we were all caught in the same environment, we all kind of mutually supported each other as best as we could, and tried to survive those 6 hours every, Monday to Friday, from September through. Actually, it was middle of August for us actually, to the end of June, And the reason I say middle of August because in that part of New Brunswick is potato country, and so the kids would be released from or let go from school mid-September to help with the farmers to go out in the potato fields, and so families would take the whole family out in the potato fields and help the farmers with their harvesting. But within those months, the best months, to be honest with you, were July and August, because you could walk around the school. You could walk on school grounds. You could speak your language, and there was no fear. There was no fear. There's no fear. Not that we tried to hang around the school a lot, but the thing is, there was the school, and then the building right next to it was the community hall. Even though, like I said, in the summertime we stayed away from the school, as much as we could, and we left the nuns to themselves. Nobody ever, as far as I recall, bothered the nuns, and then the priest had the priest's house right next to the church, and there was there was a brother, that worked with the priest over there, and he was really nice. Brother Ernie was his name.
So after day school, did you continue your education, or did you leave school, or?
The majority of us from the reserve, we continued our schooling. There were very few that didn't go to school in town in Perth and then Perth Andover. Go to the schools down there, and then a good number of us continued on to university. We would either go to either St. Thomas University in Fredericton or University of New Brunswick in Fredericton, or some people went to the trade schools as well to learn a trade. So what we got from our parents was the value of education, of learning and continuing on with the education was important. And it's only in my later years now that I realized and understood that I was actually being indoctrinated the whole time through that education system. Because in all of those years, except for when we finally got to St. Thomas University, in all of those years, you only learned about colonizer and the colonizers' histories. You learned about the prime ministers, or what happened in England, and all that stuff, through history and. Like I said, the support that we got from our parents was continue on your education, keep going to university. And sure enough, a lot of us in not only in my family, but in many of the families from Tobique continued on. I can't say that, it was the same for every Wolastoqey community, but definitely for Tobique. There were a lot of people that continued on the post-secondary in one way or another.
How important is it for Canadians to know about the federal day school system?
I think it's personally to me, since I survived it, as my shirt says, I'm a day school survivor, and I think it's very important for Canadians to know things that happen to very young children, Indigenous children, First Nations, Métis, and Inuit children during that period of time. And as I told you earlier, the experiences of children in residential schools, that's becoming more and more known of and aware of. I think a lot of people aren't as familiar or know about the day school experiences. But then there are still other children, such as children with disabilities that went to other schools, other institutions, and had their own life experiences, which were equally horrible and horrific. And so there was a lot of things that happened. That there's like I said, there's the children that went to residential schools. There's the children that went to the day schools, like myself. There's children with disabilities who went to other institutions. But then there's other children still who experience other horrific things, even in the public school system when they were little, grades 1 to 6, 1 to whatever it was. So there's still other children's experiences with the Canadian or the colonizers' education system that still aren't aware, but I would really want people to know more about the day schools and talk with us survivors of the day schools and be able to, because to be honest with you, even talking with you is mental wellness to me. It's a part of my healing.
Of course,
along with the work that I do. It's about that healing path and staying on that healing path and finding healing and safetyness and security, which I didn't have at school. There was no safetyness there. There was no security there. And so I know that as First Nations people, I can only speak on First Nations perspectives. Whenever we gather, we make sure that we're in a safe place, in a safe environment, and because if we go to a hotel in a city and we have a bad experience, that word gets around. And we don't go to that hotel again for meetings. But if we go to a hotel and we have a good experience and people in that hotel are willing to work with us and understand why we need to smudge and want to smudge, we'll go back to those places because they've said this is a safe place and a safe space for you.
Feel safe,
So that's what we're always constantly looking for.
Talking about reconciliation, and this is the word that's been going around the country the last few years. What would you say about reconciliation in Canada? Like, what do you think you'd like to see in the future of our country?
Well, a part of it is, I was able to attend some of the TRC, Truth and Reconciliation Commission hearings, and gatherings that they hosted. Those are the kinds of opportunities that we continually need to have, because it's an evolutionary process. I think the relationship between, Indigenous peoples and mainstream society, all of the different nations of other peoples that live on our ancestral lands, newcomers, I think they need to be made aware of what life is like for us in Canada, and the challenges that we confront as Indigenous peoples of seeking out our ancestral knowledge, seeking out our ancestral ways, and so reconciliation to me is, I've always been confused with the word. I'm smart enough to know what reconciliation is supposed to be about, I think, in terms of, some people have done wrong to each other, right? And you're trying to find that kind of like happy relationship again. Well, I don't think that we ever did anything wrong to anybody as First Nations people. So I'm trying to understand how that, other than us telling our truth to them about our life experiences, either as children or as being colonized peoples, indoctrinated through the education system of only the Western worldview, and without any acceptance or incorporation into that education system of our ancestral worldview, that to me says that we're trying to carve out a space for ourselves within mainstream society, including the education system, and so reconciliation, I don't know. It's a really, how does healing happen for us? Because that's what I'm trying to do for myself, and that's what I'm trying to do for and support for other First Nations people, on and off the reserve. I mean, on and off the reserve. That seems like a weird term to me still. But on the other hand, reconciliation is, more of us being able to and wanting and willing to have the kind of open and honest conversations that we need to have with each other.
Yeah.
And us and people not questioning what our life experiences are within a colonized, indoctrinated world.
Yeah.
Because it hasn't stopped. The things that led to where we're at, the colonizer system is still in place.
Yeah.
The governments are still there. They're still determining, and we can talk about something like Jordan's Principle, where the government unilaterally decides, no, we're going to all of a sudden impose these conditions on the program.
Right.
And the people that don't have a voice in that are us. Well, reconciliation would tell me that we should have had conversations with government officials to say, how do we modify Jordan's Principle to be of better support and services to our peoples, children and youth, and even that aging out criteria, which again is a manufactured aging out thing between federal and provincial governments, and no Indigenous peoples had a voice in that.
Right.
Because we would have said nobody ages out. Why would people age out at the legal age of the province? It doesn't make any sense. So reconciliation to me would be government stop doing things unilaterally. Federal and provincial governments, because even the premier here in Ontario and the premier in New Brunswick, who are communicating with the prime minister, don't mention Indigenous peoples and the inclusion of Indigenous peoples in the things that they're deciding.
Yeah.
So you got to stop that unilateral decision making.
Yeah. Well said, Conrad. One more question, and it's basically I just wanted to ask you. You said so many good things, so many strong points, and we've had a really good discussion here. And I know you're doing other work. You shared some stuff, some children's books that you're working on. Do you want to talk a little bit about that as a last point in our discussion on day schools?
I would love to, Gord. Thank you for the opportunity to speak about the work that I'm currently doing. With the Wabanaki Council on Disabilities. And anytime I talk about the Wabanaki Council on Disabilities, I always mention my late cousin, Wendell Nicholas, who was born and grew up legally blind, so he had limited sight. People would say it was a disability, but for him, it was a phenomenal ability. He would travel the world, in working with other Indigenous persons with disabilities. He'd go down to the United Nations, he'd be in Geneva, he'd be in communities, all the time, working with people. And it was Wendell's idea to create what he called the Wabanaki Council on Disability. And so we started working together on it. And unfortunately, between then and now, Creator has said, Wendell, I need you to come up here and to be on your spirit walk, to walk with your family, your ancestors. So, Wendell passed on, and at the time he was working with a number of other Wabanaki persons with disabilities, and one of them is the current chairperson of the Wabanaki Council on Disability, Sheila Johnson from the Millbrook First Nation in Truro. And she's deaf, and she was a deaf child. Basically, it's new work.
Yeah.
It's brand new work. There's no research done on Indigenous persons with disabilities. There may be tangential work. Yeah. Well, now even in research on Indigenous peoples, persons with disabilities are mentioned maybe every so often or here and there. Yeah. We're dedicating our work because of Wendell to focus on the lives of Wabanaki persons with disabilities. Yeah. Again, living on and off reserve. And one of the things that to me was important to do was to, because I was searching around. I said, are there children's books, Indigenous children's books that have disabilities within them? And I couldn't find anything. And maybe somebody listening can find something. But we moved forward on it, and we created, the book called Sheila Shares Her Gift. It's about, it focuses on Sheila and her self being a deaf person, and with the support of Wendell, who is in the book too.
This is the first book that you published?
This first book that we've published, and we're hoping to publish more.
Yeah.
Definitely a series. I'd love to have a series of these focused on, like I said, this one is focused on persons that are deaf. There are persons that have limited sight and hearing, or limited sight and blind, I should say, as well as children with autism, children with Down syndrome, and so many other things, But even to explore the terminology, disability within our ancestral worldview. Because our ancestors did not see anybody or label anybody as a person with a disability. And in fact, they were considered gifts from the Creator, who brought knowledge and life experiences to our elders, to our knowledge keepers, who would talk with them about what their life experiences are and learn from persons that were blind, persons that were deaf, and then that whole world of ASL, sign language, and the hand talk that our ancestors developed and evolved over thousands and thousands of years, all across Turtle Island. Yeah. So this work on disabilities is, to be very honest with you, it's, I don't like to use the word groundbreaking, but yet it is. We're uncovering things that other people haven't done the work on, and we're getting some really good, strong support from the Canadian Association of the Deaf, the CNIB, both in the Atlantic region as well as in nationally, and then so many other groups. And we've gotten good support from the provincial government of Nova Scotia, and quite a bit of support too from even the federal government, through their Accessible Canada legislation and the Accessible Canada offices that they have here in Ottawa. So there's been a lot of support opportunity for us to start to do this work. We're still, even though we've been doing it for upwards of 10 years, we're still just starting. Yes. But it's still a long road. It's still a long way to go. The other thing that I continue to advocate with federal officials all the time, no matter where they are or where I meet them, is that similar work needs to be done in every region of the country. And so we've explored, like I said, even the word disability from an ancestral worldview. And things like that, and when we get the kind of support and interest that we're getting from so many groups and organizations, you're doing the right things and focused on the correct things. And it starts with what Wendell Nicholas had thought of, literally all of his life.
Well, thank you for taking the time to be with us today, Conrad. Been talking to Conrad Saulis on the day school, federal day school system, and his work in the world of disabilities among Indigenous people. Thank you for taking the time on behalf of the Legacy Hope Foundation.
Well, Ewan Gord, thank you very much.
All right, thank you, Conrad. Miigwech.
Thanks for tuning into this special podcast series on the Federal Indian Day School system, produced by the Legacy of Hope Foundation and made possible by the generous support from the Indigenous Screen Office. This series deals with difficult subject matter. The Hope for Wellness helpline is available 24/7 to Indigenous peoples across Canada and can be reached at 1-855-242-3310 or available through chat at hopeforwellness.ca. Counseling is available in English, French, Cree, Ojibwe, and Inuktitut on request. For more information about the Indigenous Screen Office, visit iso-bea.ca.